Gasps rippled through the live audience as Robert Downey Jr. rose from his chair, eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. The camera tried to follow him, but he was already gone, walking off the set of The View in the middle of a nationally televised segment. Whoopi Goldberg sat frozen in her seat, lips parted in disbelief, her co-hosts scrambling for words. No one knew what to say. Not the hosts, not the audience, not even the producers behind the scenes. How does something like this happen? How does one of Hollywood's most beloved actors, a man who clawed his way back from the depths of addiction and disgrace, unravel in real time, live before millions of viewers? This wasn't just a celebrity spat. It was something else, something deeper. Was it politics? A personal wound reopened? A clash of ego and ideology? Or something far more calculated? A showdown that had been simmering long before the cameras started rolling. Tonight, we take you inside the chaos. The unfiltered tension, the uncut confrontation, and the moments before and after the world watched Robert Downey Jr. walk away, not from a question, but from a stage that couldn't hold the weight of what was about to happen. Long before the cameras rolled and before the red lights signaled live, the tension had already started to coil in the air. Robert Downey Jr. wasn't just another guest, he was a symbol, a comeback king, a man who had risen from the ashes of scandal and prison cells to become one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. But beneath the polished smile and press-ready charm, there were still parts of him that hadn't healed, parts the world was never supposed to see again. Whoopi Goldberg, on the other hand, wasn't just a host. She was an institution, the anchor of The View, known for speaking her mind without hesitation. Her convictions were sharp, her tone sharper, and she had a history of poking where it hurt, especially when it came to guests with complicated pasts. That morning, our DJ arrived at the studio flanked by handlers, his face unreadable behind dark glasses. Staffers whispered. He looked tense, focused, not his usual self. In the green room, producers prepped him. Light topics, brief mentions of his latest film, maybe a nod to his advocacy work. Nothing too deep, nothing too real. But there was a shift. A last-minute note slipped to Whoopi by one of the segment writers. A single question, one that had nothing to do with the movie, and everything to do with Robert's past. Backstage, the laughter was forced. The makeup team worked in silence. The floor manager called out time checks. But even he sounded tight. Everyone knew this wasn't going to be a regular interview. Everyone could feel it coming. A storm was about to break on live television, and no one was ready for the fallout. The invitation had seemed routine. Robert Downey Jr. was doing the press rounds for his latest film, a politically charged thriller that had already stirred conversation in early screenings. The View was a natural stop, big platform, wide audience, and a history of digging beneath the surface. But this time, something felt different. Sources close to the production say the invitation came with specific boundaries. Robert's team made it clear, no deep dives into his past, no baiting questions about his arrests, his recovery, or his long bruising battle with the industry. This was supposed to be about the film, and only the film. Producers nodded, promised discretion, smiled, but behind closed doors, the energy shifted. Whoopi had reservations, not about Robert as a guest, but about staying quiet. She had read early reviews of the film and saw what others had missed. Parallels between the movie's plot and Robert's own life. Addiction, corruption, redemption, hypocrisy. She didn't want a promotional puff piece. She wanted a moment in the prep meetings. The discussion got heated. One segment producer reportedly warned, he'll walk if he feels cornered. Another pushed back, then maybe he should. The morning of the show, tension leaked into every corner of the studio. Wardrobe assistants said RDJ barely spoke during fittings. The stage manager noted he kept checking his phone. When a junior producer made a nervous joke, Robert didn't laugh. Meanwhile, Whoopi reviewed her cards and added one of her own. A single question not approved, not discussed. And as the countdown to air began, everyone in the control room held their breath. This wasn't just going to be another interview, it was already a fuse, waiting for a spark. The opening minutes felt calm, deceptively so. Robert Downey Jr. took his seat with the practiced grace of someone who had done this 1,000 times. He smiled. He cracked a soft joke. The audience applauded. On the surface, everything seemed normal, routine. But beneath that smile, his eyes scanned the table. Whoopi sat across from him, her expression unreadable. She offered a polite nod, then shifted her notes slightly, fingers tapping in a steady rhythm like a metronome counting down. The first few questions were warm. Talk of the new film, the director's vision, a behind-the-scenes anecdote about a difficult stunt, laughter. Even Robert relaxed for a moment. Then came the shift. It wasn't abrupt. It was surgical. Your character, Whoopi began, is a man haunted by his past, trying to do good while the world keeps questioning his motives. Was that something you related to? A beat. Robert blinked, hesitated. The smile faltered. Just a fraction. Well, he said slowly. That's what acting is, right? Drawing from different places. But Whoopi didn't blink. Different places, she repeated, or personal ones. There it was. The audience grew quiet. The air tightened. Robert glanced down, then up. If this is going where I think it's going, he said. We had an agreement. Joy Behar shifted in her seat. Sonny Hostin looked toward the producer's table off stage. There was a flicker of panic, a silent call for direction, but Whoopi pressed on. Is redemption real if we're not allowed to talk about what we're redeeming ourselves from? Robert leaned back, arms folded, his voice dropped. You want to have that conversation, Whoopi, right here, live? She nodded. Once calm, steady, why not? And just like that, the table turned cold. The lights still burned bright. The cameras still rolled, but the interview was gone now. It was a confrontation, and it was just getting started. It happened in less than 60 seconds. But it changed everything. Robert's tone shifted first, no longer measured, no longer charming. His words cut, sharper now, laced with the quiet fury of a man who felt cornered. I've spent over a decade proving I'm not that guy anymore, he said, voice tightening. But some people, he glanced directly at Whoopi, don't let go of the past unless it benefits them. Whoopi didn't flinch. This isn't about your past, Robert, she replied. It's about the truth, the one you packaged, cleaned up, and sold to America. And now you're cashing in on it through a character that's basically ... you. A gasp from the crowd. Audible. Robert leaned forward, the weight of his anger barely contained. You think this is about cashing in? Do you have any idea what I gave up to fix my life? He pointed off stage. Ask the crew. Ask the people who've known me longer than a segment. I didn't survive hell just to be dissected on daytime television. Whoopi shot back. And I didn't survive this industry to babysit egos who walk in here expecting applause with no accountability. The studio froze. The producers looked to each other. No one cut to commercial. No one dared. The other co-hosts sat in silence, eyes darting between the two. It was no longer a talk show. It was a showdown. Then came the breaking point. Robert stood up. Slow, controlled, but final. I came here out of respect, he said, voice low, trembling just beneath the surface. Not to be ambushed. He took off his mic, placed it on the table, and with a tight nod to no one in particular, turned and walked off set. The audience didn't cheer, didn't clap, they just watched, stunned, as one of the most iconic actors of our time disappeared behind the curtain, leaving silence, shock, and a table full of unfinished questions behind him. The cameras had cut to commercial, but the chaos didn't stop. Behind the curtain, Robert Downey Jr. strode past stunned crew members, his face flushed with heat and disbelief. One of his handlers tried to speak. He waved them off. Not here. Not now, he muttered. In the control room, producers scrambled. The segment had imploded on live television, and no one knew how to patch it together. One executive whispered into their headset, damage control. Now, meanwhile, Whoopi remained in her seat, staring at the space Robert had just vacated. Her expression unreadable, not triumphant, not shaken, just ... still. What the hell just happened? Joy Behar whispered. He walked, Sonny said quietly. He really walked backstage. An intern claimed Robert threw his mic pack across the hallway. Another said he was pacing, muttering something about betrayal and cheap shots. No cameras caught it, but the whispers spread fast. Security was dispatched to escort his team through a private exit. By then, news alerts had already started hitting phones. TMZ, Variety, Deadline, all pushing the same headline. Robert Downey Jr. walks off the View. In the dressing room corridor, a producer approached Whoopi. You okay? She nodded once, then said flatly, he wanted a conversation. I gave him one, but it wasn't just about that one moment. Back-channel texts between network execs flew. Should they issue a statement? Should they cut the segment in future airings? Who had approved the question? Phone calls lit up between agents, lawyers, and PR firms. Robert's team was drafting a response before he'd even left the building. By the time he stepped into his black SUV, the internet had already taken sides. But no one, not even the people in the room, could agree on what they had just witnessed: a meltdown, a confrontation, or something far more personal, and far more planned. By the time the sun had set, the story had spread like wildfire. Clips of the confrontation flooded. Social media, edited, reposted, reanalyzed, millions of views within hours. Some called it brave, others called it disgraceful. But everyone had an opinion. TEAMRDJ trended first, fans rallying around Robert, praising his composure, accusing Whoopi of ambush journalism. Old interviews resurfaced. His recovery journey, his lowest points, his triumphs. They painted him as a man wronged, a survivor unfairly dragged back into the mud. Then came Team Whoopi supporters, called her fearless, unapologetic, the last person on daytime television willing to hold celebrities accountable. They said she asked what everyone else was too afraid to, and that Robert cracked under the weight of honesty. News outlets scrambled for angles. CNN framed it as a cultural flashpoint, when redemption meets reckoning. Fox News spun it into a political headline, Hollywood meltdown over liberal bias. Entertainment Tonight played it safer, a moment that shook daytime TV. Even celebrities weighed in. An A-list actor tweeted Downey's earned his piece, let the man move forward. A talk show host posted, if you walk off when it gets tough, maybe the questions were too real. The View's own network issued a short, careful statement. Today's segment featured a passionate exchange. We respect all our guests and hosts. Nothing more. But insiders said the fallout behind closed doors was anything but calm. Executives debated pulling the episode from streaming platforms. Some argued to leave it up, citing transparency. Others feared it could become fuel for lawsuits, or worse, spark a boycott. And Robert, he went radio silent. No tweets, no press. Just a single, cryptic Instagram story posted that night. A black screen with the words, asterisk, silence, doesn't mean guilt. It means peace. Asterisk, the world didn't know whether to applaud, or brace for what came next. In the quiet aftermath, beneath the noise of headlines and hashtags, something deeper lingered. This wasn't just about a celebrity storming off a talk show. It was about the fragile mask we expect fame to wear, the redemption arc we demand, then dissect. Robert Downey Jr. had spent years rebuilding not just his career, but his soul. He'd done the interviews, played the hero, embraced the narrative, but what happens when the redemption story hits a wall? What happens when someone like Whoopi Goldberg, a woman who's fought her own battles, weathered her own storms, decides that politeness is no longer enough? This wasn't a clash of personalities, it was a clash of philosophies. To Robert, the past was a locked door, one he had earned the right to leave behind. To Whoopi, the past was a mirror, and if you're going to show your reflection to the world, it better be honest. Their conflict was bigger than a segment, bigger than a disagreement. It was about the public's hunger to see vulnerability, but only when it's polished, only when it fits the story we like. What shook people wasn't the argument, it was the silence after. The look in Robert's eyes when he realized the narrative was no longer his. The calm in Whoopi's voice when she refused to back down. There are moments in television history that feel staged, manufactured, designed to provoke. This wasn't one of them. This was raw, messy, human, and maybe that's why it hit so hard, because in a world of media, masks, and choreographed interviews, we didn't just witness a moment, we witnessed something real, and it left everyone, on stage and off, asking themselves the same question. Asterisk, what do we do when the truth doesn't fit the script? Asterisk, as the dust settled, the repercussions rippled far beyond the studio walls. Robert Downey Jr.'s next public appearance was delayed indefinitely. Film promotions paused. Agents and publicists scrambled to contain the narrative, carefully crafting messages to rebuild bridges already cracked. Whoopi Goldberg faced her own storm. Supporters praised her courage. Critics accused her of cruelty. The View's ratings spiked, viewers drawn by the promise of real drama, raw emotions, and unfiltered truth. Behind closed doors, the network held emergency meetings. Executives debated new policies on guest interviews. Questions about sensitive topics were to be reviewed more thoroughly. Boundaries redrawn. Meanwhile, social media became a battleground. Memes, heated debates, think pieces, and late-night talk show monologues dissected every moment of the confrontation. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a cultural moment, a reflection of the times. And through it all, the question lingered. What does accountability look like when the past is both a prison and a teacher? For Robert, the walk-off was more than a moment of anger. It was a statement, a refusal to be defined solely by history. For Whoopi, it was a reminder that some truths demand to be spoken, even if it means breaking the fragile peace. The fallout would shape careers, reputations, and conversations about redemption, responsibility, and media in a way no one saw coming. But one thing was clear. This wasn't the end of the story, it was only the beginning. As the cameras powered down and the studio lights dimmed, the world outside was anything but quiet. Fans debated endlessly, online, dissecting every word, every glance, every pause. Was Robert justified? Was Whoopi too harsh? The lines blurred, the conversation transcended celebrity gossip and entered the realm of cultural reckoning. Late-night hosts dissected the moment with biting humor and sharp insight. Pundits argued over the meaning of redemption in a society obsessed with past mistakes. Meanwhile, those closest to Robert and Whoopi grappled with the fallout in private. Friends worried about the toll the confrontation would take on Robert's fragile peace. Colleagues reached out to Whoopi, offering support amid the backlash. Industry insiders whispered about the changing landscape of celebrity interviews, how audiences now demanded honesty but were quick to judge vulnerability. The walk-off was a crack in the carefully constructed armor he had built over decades, a reminder that some battles aren't fought on a movie set, but in the glare of public scrutiny. For Whoopi Goldberg, it was a reaffirmation of her role as a fearless truth-teller in a world that often prefers silence, and for all of us watching, it was a stark lesson. In the theater of fame, the most explosive moments aren't scripted. They're lived on. When real lives collide with real truths, the fallout is impossible to ignore. The question now isn't just who won the argument, it's what this moment says about us, about the stories we tell, the heroes we create, the forgiveness we offer and the grudges we hold. Robert Downey Jr.'s walk-off didn't just expose a fractured relationship between two public figures. It peeled back the curtain on a cultural obsession with redemption and reckoning, on a world where every mistake is archived, every apology scrutinized, and every second chance questioned. Whoopi Goldberg's relentless pursuit of the truth challenged the comfortable narratives we cling to, forcing us to confront the messy reality behind the headlines. And as the cameras fade to black, one thing remains clear. In this age of performative honesty, genuine confrontation still has the power to shock, to divide, to awaken, because sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in courts or studios, they're fought in the fragile spaces where our past meets our present, and where truth refuses to be silenced. As the screen fades out, the echoes of that day linger, a reminder that beneath the glitz and glamour, beneath the scripted smiles and rehearsed lines, real people are caught in real struggles. Robert Downey Jr. and Whoopi Goldberg are not just celebrities, they are reflections of the complexities we all face: redemption and judgment, courage and fear, truth and denial. This confrontation was more than a clash of personalities, it was a mirror held up to society, challenging us to look beyond headlines, beyond soundbites, and ask what justice really means in a world hungry for both redemption and reckoning. And maybe, just maybe, the most powerful moments aren't the ones we plan for, but the ones that break through the noise and reveal something raw, honest, and utterly human. Because in the end, that's the story worth telling. Not the one scripted for cameras, but the one lived behind the scenes. Where silence and truth collide and change becomes possible. Thank you for joining us on this journey behind the scenes of one of the most unforgettable moments in live television history. We've seen how a single question can unravel decades of carefully crafted narratives, how a confrontation between two icons can expose deeper truths about fame, forgiveness, and the human spirit. What happened on The View that day was not just entertainment, it was a lesson in vulnerability, courage, and the messy reality of redemption. As the story continues to unfold, one thing is certain: real drama isn't scripted, it's lived, and it's in those raw, unscripted moments that we find the truth we're all searching for. If this story moved you, leave your thoughts below. What do you think really happened behind the scenes, and where do you stand in this battle between past and present? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because the next chapter in this saga is just around the corner.